Welcome to Grid Live Wrap Up. NASCAR Cup Series YellaWood 500 at Talladega Superspeedway didn't disappoint. Max Verstappen may have disappointed McLaren fans, but for F1 fans, the points battle is picking up. Plus, MotoGP, a big win for Trackhouse. World Rally Championship, Rafael Pera says he's leaving, gets the win, and the grid ranking for week 29. Joe Samaniego here with me. We have Kobe Lambeth from Grid Tonight and Matthew Bro from Grid Network TV working on his article, which will be up on our website. So be sure to visit gridnetworktv.com. The website, the YouTube channel, all that made possible by these fine investors: Con, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, and Crystal, our newest investor. Link in the video description to invest in us through Patreon. You can also do Buy Me a Coffee, YouTube Super Chat, get your name on the leaderboard, and the simplest way to support us: subscribe, like, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs. We got Grid Encore tomorrow, Grid Tonight on Wednesday, and then a big weekend of previewing next weekend's races at Martinsville. We also have the wrap up for next weekend races at Formula One. MotoGP, a busy weekend, but the big focus is going to be Martinsville. This weekend, Matthew, the big focus was the thriller of a race we saw at Talladega. We didn't see a big one of 10 cars or more. We did see a good sized crash of about, I believe, 5 or 6 vehicles, which took out Chase Elliott on lap 52. We saw overall good super speedway race, and once again, the race finished in overtime. Late caution when Chris Buescher got pushed by William Byron. A little bit of a slight angle, and Byron was getting pushed by Carson Hocevar. Racing deal. Toyota, after a dreadful round of 12, where we're asking what's going on, are they gonna risk missing the playoffs? Some of the drivers. Well, now the round of 8, they are 2 for 2. Chase Briscoe is now entering Phoenix with a chance at the championship. His streak of top 10 finishes in all the playoff races still intact. He's looking good under the radar. And even during the race, you pointed out, it looked like he was about to point his way further into the top 4. But a win makes life easier for him and the 19th team because they can focus on Phoenix, the championship. How impressed were you with how Briscoe raced Talladega today?
Quite, honestly. And I think if you were to tell me before the playoffs started that Chase Briscoe would finish inside the top 10, I believe it's like 7 out of the 8. I don't know how he finished at the Roval off the top of my head, but I think he was just outside the top 10 there. But still, nonetheless, I definitely picked him to be out in the round of 12, and then he has shut me up multiple times now. And especially I texted our Slack chat, like you mentioned. I said, oh, is Briscoe really going to point his way in? And no, he didn't. He decided to go out and win the whole race. So I was quite impressed with him. He showed a lot of command, a lot of poise up in the front. And at Talladega, he hasn't finished in the top 10 there since April, and he's only done that twice in his entire career. So it's like, or at least in the next gen era specifically. So it was like, yeah, that kind of shocked me a lot. I think if you ask me, I don't know about pre-race. I don't even think I mentioned him as a contender to win. I don't really think any of us did. He did well at Daytona, obviously, early in the year, and he just is quietly continuing to do. I feel like he's doing a lot of what Ross did in 2022. Like, I feel like we knew he had talent, but we didn't know how much talent he had, and he's really just showing up when it matters the most. So it's like, shout out to him. I was really impressed with him all day, too. And then another guys, too. I mean, guys like Ty Gibbs ran really respectable races. Guys like Todd Gillen made his way up to the front from 27th. But, yeah, Briscoe specifically, it's crazy to think that Toyota, obviously, besides Hamlin in the last round, had they kind of fell off a little bit. But then they come out and win the first 2 of this round. So I guess if they're following the script, Christopher Bell's going to win Martinsville because they had a Hamlin, Briscoe, and Bell win in the first round. So I wonder if that's going to happen again. Not in the same order, obviously, but yeah, Briscoe, I mean, shout out to him. I think he scored a lot of stage points too. I mean, I'm writing my story right now. I think he scored the most points of the race, which doesn't always happen now with stage racing, but he did. And I think think Ty Gibbs actually had 49 points to Briscoe's 50, which is pretty good. So, yeah, shout out to Chase Briscoe. Really impressive. Obviously, he had the speed. Toyota usually does not have speed on super speedways in qualifying specifically. I think I've read posts before by former Toyota people that they don't usually set the car up for qualifying because obviously there is no practice. So they usually set it up for, I guess, race trim. But to see guys like Riley Herbst, Bubba Wallace, I think even Christopher Bell was up front along with Chase Briscoe to start the event, that you kind of knew that they were going to have some speed too. So shout out. Obviously, they had 3 Toyotas in the top 4, and Chase Briscoe was the man of the hour in victory lane. So his 3rd win, Joe, with Joe Gibbs Racing this season. Talk about, I think we all kind of predicted it pre-race. We'll have to go back to visit Tanner, Jonathan, yourself, and our pre-season predictions. I think we all said Briscoe was going to win multiple races. I didn't think he was going to make the championship 4.
Yeah, I felt for Briscoe, especially when it was announced he was coming into this ride, I felt there was almost 2 paths. There was the path of you struggle, you end up like a driver like J.J. Yaley, Joey Logano, where it just seems like something's amiss and you don't get the results, or you come in and you're a Matt Kenseth, a Carl Edwards, a driver that has a success. And it looked good at first with the Daytona 500 pole. Then there was that penalty. Some races, just nothing really there. But it just seems the second half of the year, particularly after Pocono, he's been on another level. And I feel he is a genuine title contender. That team has a good, fast car unloaded on the track at Phoenix, a track he knows how to win in. He did it with Stewart-Haas Racing years ago. Watch out. He could be an upset, and I would truly say an upset champion. First year with Joe Gibbs Racing, come out, 3 wins. Not to mention, he won the Southern 500 and get a championship. That is just something where I think he will really show that he has the capability to go out there, lead a team to a championship. And I'll be honest, for quite some time, especially with Stewart-Haas Racing, I was thinking, I'm doubting about his ability to do that. Proving a lot of folks wrong, and 3 wins in the championship. Life is good for him and for his sponsor, Bass Pro Shop. Been around the sport for a long time. Now they're going to have a driver contending for the championship. They're going to have Denny Hamlin in that battle, so be it teammates. Toyota's loving this, and of course, Toyota will love to have another Toyota in that championship. So the big thing is, though, when it comes to get another Toyota in the championship, it's not exactly an easy road because Hamlin, Briscoe, they're locked in. 3rd in the points, Christopher Bell. Only 1 point ahead of Kyle Larson. Longtime on-track rival together from when they raced in the Chili Bowl, various motorsport disciplines on dirt. Larson ran out of gas on the final lap. How things would have been different if he didn't run out of gas. William Byron, tri-oval, got spun. Carson Hocevar getting pushed. Hocevar hits him in the wrong angle. He loses a ton of spots, so William Byron goes from like a top 5 position down to 25th. So now you have Christopher Bell plus 37, Kyle Larson plus 36, and then William Byron minus 36. Essentially a must-win situation. Knowing that if somebody below the cut line wins, whoever is 4th in the standings is the first one out. So how intense will this battle be between the 3 drivers? And let's not count out Ryan Blaney could be the big spoiler in all this. He's won this event at Martinsville the last 2 years.
Absolutely. I think if I am a NBC producer next Sunday, October is the 26th, for Martinsville, I am putting a specific ticker to watch the battle between Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell, because it is almost inevitable that one of those 2 will be in the championship 4. So I would watch that really closely if I was NBC. And it's crazy. Larson on that final lap goes from having a 40-something point day that would have almost certainly put him in regardless on points to only a 20-point day, and now Christopher Bell is ahead of him. So that's just the points racing stuff, right? William Byron and Kyle Larson were the full season points leaders if you want to follow who's been the best this year. And then obviously they finished within one spot of one another, and Kyle Larson actually scored, even though he finished one spot behind Byron, he scored one more point. So technically Larson has scored the most points this season in the NASCAR Cup Series in general. So I think that battle with obviously Christopher Bell started off the season really hot. We were all like, this guy's going to be in the championship 4 almost guaranteed, winning 3 races in a row, almost winning 4. It's just, I think, yeah. And then it was just like, wow. And then all of a sudden he kind of cooled off a little bit. Then he came back, started scoring some points. Then his teammates started winning more races too. So, yeah, it's just absolutely crazy. I think that battle will be super intense. Hopefully there is no silly business like there was last year between the Byron and Bell. This time it would be Larson and excuse me, Larson and Bell. But then again, too, the 2 best drivers at Martinsville. Well, Kyle Larson is one of them, but then Ryan Blaney, and then also William Byron's up there too. So William Byron or Ryan Blaney can play spoiler, and so can Chase Elliott's won there before. Joey Logano's won there before. Ryan Blaney's won there multiple times before. Yeah, William Byron's won. So even Christopher Bell has won at Martinsville. So that entire guys who need to do well have won at this track before coming up. So I think it is going to be chaos. I think if you're a pure system type of fan, you're probably going to want to see Bell and Larson maybe in the championship 4, because I think Blaney would be like 5th or 6th in the full season standings. Briscoe was like even behind them though too. So I guess it all depends on who you want, but it would not shock me if we see some spoiler type of thing happen where Bell and Larson are really close to each other. They're going to be trying to battle it out for that 1 point. And then someone like Ryan Blaney, someone like Chase Elliott, or hell, even someone like Joey Logano take the checkered flag first at the Xfinity 500. So it's going to be very chaotic. And hopefully this is the last time we have something this intense for a NASCAR playoff system for next year. We don't know what's happening. But yeah, that's how I feel about that one.
Like overall, I enjoy the fact that we're talking about a single position between Bell and Larson. But you brought up a good point. We don't want a repeat of what happened last year when it became evident that Byron was struggling. You had 2 Chevrolets, Chastain and Dillon, side by side, just nobody could get around. And we had a good long portion waiting for the official word. At the end of the day, Bell sort of rode the wall. That was the difference. I feel this is just one of those deals where this intensity is great, but I don't want to see that kind of potential manipulation going on, and especially when it's 1 point difference. Because if we have Ryan Blaney leading the race in the closing laps, and you have Bell ahead of Larson, and if he was ahead of him throughout the day, depending on what the gap is, I can't imagine Chevrolet saying, oh, bummer, we didn't get any Chevrolets in the championship 4. I think that's going to be devastating. So I think Chevrolet is going to come out really strong. I don't know why the last couple of years Byron has seemed to just struggle at this fall race in Martinsville. I don't think you could anticipate that occurring. I think he'll be stronger. Kyle Larson, I think, is going to be hard to beat. Christopher Bell, he's been in a situation he had to win and get into the championship for at Martinsville. He could do it, but as you said, Blaney has that opportunity. Joey Logano has that opportunity. And let's not count out Denny Hamlin could just play the Joker, essentially, and go out there, try to win, and especially they tell him, like, hey, Bell has gotten more. I mean, the max Bell could get ahead is 22 points ahead of Kyle Larson, assuming Bell wins the 2 stages and Kyle Larson gets no stage points. That's the max entering the 3rd stage. Not that much, but 20 positions, 1 position here or there. If Denny Hamlin's leading, he could really play mayhem of what happens and who he races hard. Now, one driver that's going to be racing hard, Chase Elliott, must win situation. He is just part of this tough competition this playoff because he was taken out of winning contention on lap 52 near the end of stage one, where we saw the 43, Eric Jones, Noah Gragson. They got in a little bit of contact, started a 5 or 6 car pileup, which included Chase Elliott, Austin Cindric was involved, AJ Allmendinger. I mean, for Chase Elliott, they took that car to the garage, tried to fix it, but no dice. He was done for the day, so he is way at the bottom of the playoff grid and really at a must-win situation. It's been a few years since he's won at Martinsville. How big of a disappointment is this for Chase Elliott to enter Martinsville in a must-win situation?
I mean, Joe, when you think about it, right, I think for any guy, especially, I think it's more disappointing for Ryan Blaney. But for Chase Elliott, he was really good at the start of the year, even without winning, because I know he ended up with 2 wins this season, obviously, and he could still get 3 or 4. We don't know that, but he started out so consistent even without finding victory lane. He was leading my hair's all messed up. He was even leading the regular season standings for a lot of it before Byron and ended up taking over. So Chase Elliott's been consistent. He's just been quiet this season. I think Chase Briscoe did the same thing. So it's very disappointing for the Hendrick Motorsports camp that we even said prior to the playoffs that there is a very realistic possibility that they could have 3 drivers in the championship 4. Now, if Ryan Blaney wins and Christopher Bell outduels Kyle Larson, they'll have 0, and Chevrolet would have 0. So that is a crazy thing. I think what Chase Elliott does a lot of the time is he can prevail when needed, and I think all eyes are going to be on Byron. All eyes are going to be on Kyle Larson in terms of Chevrolet. So I wouldn't shock me if Chase Elliott was up there competing for a win. The cards just have to fall right for him, and it just seems like they don't. Obviously getting caught up in an accident like that, and then if he doesn't go out and win at Kansas when Hamlin has a mistake at the end of the race, I don't even know. I think he was still below the cut or pretty close to being below the cut line. So I don't even know if we'd be even talking about him right now. We'd be talking about whether it would be Bubba Wallace or someone else. Like Christopher Bell could have won that race too. So yeah, it's quite disappointing for the Chase Elliott fans. This is first year. Obviously, he's done super well. I know he did win, obviously. Had that year where he didn't win anything and then didn't make the playoffs because he was suspended and hurt, and then comes back. And he's getting more consistent again, which is the Chase Elliott we've all known for the last decade of his racing career. He can get it done when he needs to. So I wouldn't count him out, but I kind of would too because Ryan Blaney's in the field, and that's the main reason why I would count him out at Martinsville. But yeah, Chase Elliott's still Chase Elliott. So I think it would be, if you're a Hendrick Motorsports fan, if any of them are watching right now, which one, if you only could have one of those 3 get into the championship 4, would you rather have Kyle Larson, William Byron, or Chase Elliott make it into the championship 4? Who poses the biggest threat to the Joe Gibbs Racing Toyotas come Phoenix? I don't know. It's tough because you would think Byron was the best for most of the season, but then at the same time, Kyle Larson is probably the best of them. So I don't know who's the most deserving. So I think Hendrick Motorsports fans are going to have either a really crappy Sunday next week or a really happy Sunday, depending on if they get 1 or 2 drivers in. But regardless, at least one of them will not be in the championship 4. So best case scenario, they get a William Byron victory and a Kyle Larson outduels Christopher Bell. Worst case scenario is they all poop the bed and none of them make it. So we'll see what happens.
That is the thing. When it comes to Sunday, Kyle Larson stay ahead of Christopher Bell, try to win the race. You do that, you're going to be in the event William Byron gets the race win. That sounds complex because you got other factors as well too. William Byron could be ahead of the 2 of them, but if you have Chase Elliott up there, he would love to get a win, advance. He's won a championship at Phoenix before. He'll feel good doing that again. Kyle Larson stay ahead of Bell, you could still have two Hendrick Motorsport cars in the championship four. There's still that route. For Chase Elliott, though, I feel that team, they seem to do a pretty good job of, okay, we had a rough race. We'll just come out next week looking stronger, trying to run faster, getting the pace they need. So I wouldn't exactly count Chase Elliott out. Qualifying will be the big tail of the tape of where they stack up off the trailer. Now, one of the things, Chase Elliott, of course, he's won at Talladega. I think a lot of people anticipated he would be a contender. But Talladega, as we talked about in the previous show, was Talladega. Didn't have the controversy like years past. I say that was a plus. The fuel saving, lack of actions we've seen in the past few years, I feel like wasn't that drastic. I feel like this was still a very engaging race. Overall, this race has been getting a lot of praises from folks that were watching it, saying this is one of the best shows in this generation of cars on Talladega Superspeedway. Plus the storylines of surviving Talladega, in the case of Chase Briscoe winning your first Superspeedway race, and you're now going to be in the championship four. Has your opinion changed since this morning's show about the placement of Talladega here in the round of 8?
No, I still don't like it. It's one of those things. I feel like one thing we talk a lot about on this show is most of us feel that a lot of the schedules should only be like one race per, like Michigan should have one race, Kansas should have, so on and so forth. So you could go to so many different tracks. And I think so obviously we're consistent with that. So I'm going to stay consistent as I feel like Talladega should not be here. It's one of those things, we overhype it, right? Michigan's had some snooze fests, for example, and then they had an absolute incredible showing last time out. We were like, oh, maybe they should have 2 dates. So I don't care how good Talladega was this time around. I know there was no big ones. There was a little bit of chaos. I still don't think it should be this late. I hate the idea of the super speedway, especially if we have a playoff system this late in the playoffs. I'm again, like I said, probably 12-ish, less than 12 hours ago. I absolutely love the idea of when there is a playoff system that has every single thing you do from short track to super speedway to road course, so on and so forth. I don't love the placement of having a super speedway race determine who you're in the championship for. And I guess you're lucky that Chase Briscoe was already above the cut line heading into this race. But if it was someone like, say, Chase Elliott, who was 30 to 40 points below the cut line or something like that, or Ryan Blaney. I mean, Ryan Blaney this year has been great. But you see a lot of that happen where there will be occasionally the guy who does really poor in race 1 and race 2, and then is 40 to 60 points back and a must-win somehow pulls it out of their butt and wins that race. It's kind of like, well, that's not fun. And Talladega is one of those tracks I feel like we've been lucky in the next-gen era, especially playoff time, to either get an upset winner or a winner that already deserved to move on to the championship 4 or move on to the round of 8, so on and so forth. But this time around, even though Chase Briscoe won, I still don't like the placement of this event. But it's going to obviously stay regardless of what this playoff system is next season. No idea what they're doing, whether it's 32 races, 4 playoff races, whether it's a 10-race chase. I only think a few people really know what's going on. I am not one of them. But if it is like that 32 and 4, I would hate the idea of Talladega starting the playoffs. That would be absolutely silly. But then again, we just are here to talk about it and have some fun while they are actually making the important decisions, regardless of how we feel about them. So, yeah, my opinion, as stubborn, I guess, as it is, I still don't like the idea of Talladega being this late in the season. It provides – now, if this was a full season standing thing, that'd be fun because we saw the Kyle Larson and William Byron both get involved in something on the final lap, and now they're just 1 point apart. But that doesn't matter because now it's likely that maybe both of them missed the championship 4 despite being the points leaders this season throughout the first 33 events of the year. So, yeah, that's what I got, Joe.
I'll be honest, my opinion has not changed either. it was great racing, but I feel we could have gotten this kind of great racing in the regular season. I understand the big focus is the playoffs. And I will say this, I feel NBC did a good job of highlighting, look at Shane Van Gisbergen trying to get better on the ovals. Look at what Carson Hocevar is trying to do. Riley Herbst up there in the top 10 until something broke in that car. I felt like as much talk as there was about the playoffs, at least NBC tried to make the effort of let's highlight some of the non-playoff storylines. So this is the kind of race we could get in April, like the first Talladega race annually. This late in the playoffs, I mean, for William Byron's case, just thinking about it, if you were to look at the standings after Southern 500, say Talladega was the second race of the playoffs, Byron was still, I believe, plus 20 or plus 21 after the Southern 500. So if he had that spin through the grass, okay, he will probably lose those 20 spots, but he's not at risk of being eliminated because you have him dropping from fifth place all the way down to the bottom four, where it was 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th. So, yeah, 13th back gets eliminated. Here, that single-handedly, 25 positions gone. That big of a... But same time, we know the folks at NASCAR, when they make this schedule, they sort of know we want this to occur because we want that intensity to ramp up. The Byron fans are going to be on pins and needles next week, so with the Larson fans, the Bell fans, and everyone in the must-win situation are just hoping their driver's going to go out there and get that win. So they know what they're doing, but overall, I feel if we had to have a speedway, super speedway, I almost lean towards the idea of Atlanta rather than Talladega being in the playoffs, just because you have that element of handling as well, too. So it's not just 3 wide, 4 wide, and everyone going for it. So overall, some good racing at Talladega. It could happen any time of the year. I think they're just going to get better and better with this package. The one thing, though, with this package, a lot of people picked Ryan Blaney for their pick-a-winners this race weekend. Now, Team Penske, they're looking at one or both of their cars being eliminated next race weekend. Brian Blaney, he was up front, but it just seemed like that car faded. Especially after the pit stop, I thought, okay, they'll come in and make a pit stop, they'll charge through the front. It didn't really happen. Joey Logano up front all day. Towards the end, though, just didn't materialize, had to pit for fuel as well. So they have nothing to show. Logano, empty-handed. Post-race show, both drivers seemed pretty dejected. One point, we heard Brian Blaney on the radio critical about the lack of support he felt from his Ford buddies out there. Could Penske be fading at the wrong time of the season?
I mean, you hate to say it, but it sure as heck looks like it. Except, again, I am so confident in Ryan Blaney's ability to win next week that I will not write him off. I don't care if he's 47 points to the cut line. I don't care if he's 65 points to the cut line. Still very confident because you do not – there's some drivers you don't want to mess with. Like, I think a determined Denny Hamlin is a driver you don't want to mess with. And I know for a fact that an angry, needs to get it done Ryan Blaney is a driver who will get it done. So I'm very confident in him. But I don't know if there's going to be, like you said earlier in this broadcast, Joe, depends on where they qualify. Because I am not too confident if they miss it in the qualifying setup and then Logano's 35th and Blaney's 29th. I don't know what's going to happen to them. It's going to take some ballsy strategy, for lack of a better term, to get them to the front. So I think they are fading, unfortunately, for them. And I was very confident in Ryan Blaney making the championship 4. I still am confident, but not as confident anymore, because my championship 4, just like all of ours at Grid Network, is now incorrect because none of us had Chase Briscoe making the championship 4. I had Blaney and I had Byron, so likely neither of them possibly will be in the championship for. So I'm not doing too hot with my predictions, but not that that matters. But yeah, they both seem mad. I think Ryan Blaney, a lot of the tweets or X posts, whatever we call them now, which is Ryan Blaney was complaining a lot on the radio, like you had just mentioned too. Just like didn't feel like he was getting the support, just mad. They need to go out and try to win this race, and they are not doing anywhere near that. They were rarely even near the front for most of it. They were towards like the end of each stage, but then when it came to the most important stage, they were nowhere to be seen. So they barely finished ahead of the spinning Kyle Larson and the spinning William Byron. So, well, the out of fuel Kyle Larson and the spinning William Byron. So, excuse me. Yeah, they are fading a little bit, and it's still possible that both of them have won at Martinsville before, Logano and Blaney. Both of them could most definitely win. Probably 90%, 95% to 5% confident in Blaney over Logano to get it done next week. But whoever does it, though, if you're a Joe Gibbs Racing Toyota or whoever else would be the fourth driver in, I would be worried if Ryan Blaney wins next week, because it's Ryan Blaney when he gets that momentum. He's a very, very tough man to beat. I don't care if you are having a Denny Hamlin type season with multi-win or a Chase Briscoe or Christopher Bell. I think Blaney is still the one to watch. So I don't know if there's going to be race manipulation from Toyota blocking the heck out of Ryan Blaney to make sure he doesn't get to the front. But I sure as heck think that he is the last guy of those in the championship for that Toyota guys specifically don't want to make it to compete against him.
Interesting. You mentioned qualifying. I looked up Ryan Blaney, the 2 years he's won at Martinsville, qualified 11th and 14th. It makes me think those years they've really focused on the we've seen long runs, surprisingly, at Martinsville. That's where he seems to be really strong. So I got an idea if they come out of the gate top 15, maybe even if there's just in the top 20, like a 17th, they could be in good shape. The big key, I feel, is the long runs, and that's where we're going to see if we have the long runs like the last couple years. These cars, this generation car at Martinsville, not exactly the same like prior generation, so we've had longer runs, harder to pass. If that trend continues, Penske could be the ones to watch, but really it's going to come down to if that's the case with the race, if it turns into such a race with long runs, and if they are able to deliver such good, fast cars where they know they're happy with. So qualifying will be the big factor, and of course, what's going to happen next weekend, we will preview the race right here on Grid Live pre-race. Then once we're done, should be race time, see who punches their final ticket and who gets in by points to Phoenix for the championship. Matthew, I know you're going to get going to work on your article, but before we let you go, what is your one shining moment?
Oh, gosh, Joe, I wish I could pick one. I have like 47. Can I ramble them off really quick? Not that many, but obviously you look at Toyota in general, obviously with Briscoe getting it done, and then obviously on the World Rally Championship side, winning again. So shout out to Toyota in that sense. NASCAR, there are a couple, but I'll start. Formula One, Max Verstappen was just a fastest lap away from being the first driver ever to have a Grand Slam with the sprints and the Grand Prix. He just unfortunately didn't get the fastest lap for him. So shout out to him. I know you guys will touch on that next. And then NASCAR, a couple more too, besides obviously, Toyota. One, Cole Custer, I think is very important to highlight the Haas factory team and Cole Custer finishing in the top 5 for the second time in 9 races. In Cole Custer's Cup career heading into this season, he only had 2 career top 5 finishes. And you have to go back to 2021 when I was still in college when he finished 5th, and then he went and won the next race, which is his only Cup win. It has been 4 years. I know he went and won an Xfinity title in between that. But to have 2 top 5s in 9 races matching your career high, your career in general, is pretty impressive. So I want to give my invisible cap to Cole Custer. And then Casey Mears. We didn't talk about Casey Mears. I was running my mouth about him. I want to apologize. I wasn't familiar with your Garage 66 game. Finishes 18th which is the first top 20 finish, in 5 years for Garage 66 when they finished with Timmy Hill at Talladega in 2020, I believe it was. They finished inside the top 20. And he also beat his former teams in Richard Childress Racing and Hendrick Motorsports. Not a single driver from either of those organizations finished ahead of Casey Mears in this event. So shout out to him as he reaches number 600 in his career very, very soon. I think he's at 599 now, if I'm not mistaken. So Martinsville's coming up. Make sure you watch the truck race to see that unfold. But those are my 77 one shining moments, Joe. I apologize to you. I apologize to Kobe. I still have a story to finish up. A lot to write about, a lot of different things to talk about. So thank you for having me on this post-race show yet again.
And thank you, Matt. As always, encourage everyone at gridnetworktv.com to see Matthew's article as it gets posted up. Kobe, let's get started with Formula One over at Austin, Texas, Circus of the Americas, the United States Grand Prix, and from 100 points behind to now only 40 points behind, Max Verstappen dominated the United States Grand Prix from the pole, as Matt said, led every lap, making it look easy, held off Lando Norris, and this was just one of those races where I think a lot of people are going to look at it. It's like this was the statement win by Max Verstappen. Oscar Piastri, 5th place, not a factor at all today. Lando Norris finally got 2nd place after a late pass around Charles Leclerc, who used an interesting tire strategy, soft tires at the beginning of the race to get that position. And something worth interesting, on F1 TV, they mentioned that under none of the prior point systems used by F1 has a person with over 100-point deficit came back to claim the driver's championship. 5 races remains, over 125 points because you also got the sprint races, 2 of those in the air. Can McLaren stop Max Verstappen?
Joe, you just list off that impressive stat from F1 TV about no one in the history of F1 and under the point system has someone come back from over 100 points back to gain the championship. I'm going to say this, Joe. You're going to see this happen for the first time. I think Max Verstappen is I don't know how he's going to do it, but I think somehow Max Verstappen is going to win this year's Formula One World Championship. I know we'll talk more about McLaren in a minute, but McLaren needs to stop beating themselves because they're literally just handing this championship to Max Verstappen on a silver platter. I don't remember when this was said, whether it was yesterday during the sprint race or today during the Grand Prix, but someone on the Sky Sports F1 broadcast said that they should make a movie about this season with Max Verstappen. If he gets the fairy tale ending at the end of the year with the 5th Formula One World Drivers Championship, because it's just been truly remarkable what Red Bull has done, since they decided to make the stunning mid-season decision to fire Christian Horner. When they fired Christian Horner, it seemed like Red Bull magically woke up when they, appointed Laurent Mekies to be the new team principal and moving him over from Racing Bulls. It seemed like that once they got the big distraction out of the way, which was Christian Horner, with his bombastic attitude, and then obviously the scandals that were hanging above his head, it just seemed like a major distraction. And also, don't forget the tension between Christian Horner and Max's dad, Jos Verstappen. Those two, it was really obvious they did not like each other at all, and that seemed to be hurting the team morale. And with the distraction out of the building, it seems like, Red Bull have pulled this together and somehow have turned the worst car in Max Verstappen's Formula One career at Red Bull. And with this car that, we joked that was a tractor at the beginning of the season, he's just plowing right through them right now. And he might plow through some papaya oranges if he continues on this run, because it's just been so incredible to watch Max Verstappen make a late season charge for the championship. The type of vibes I'm starting to get now it feels almost like the 2021 season again, when it was Verstappen and Hamilton trading blows back and forth. For the longest time, it's been Oscar Piastri at the top of the championship. Then Lando Norris, then Max Verstappen was, a distant third. But now Max Verstappen is back in the fight. And if he continues to, max out, winning the remaining sprints, winning the Grand Prix races while McLaren continues to struggle and manages drivers, I say game on. And Max Verstappen, I'd rather be him right now than I would rather be Oscar Piastri or Lando Norris, because I'm a true believer in momentum in professional sports, and Max Verstappen has all the momentum right now, and it'll be interesting to see if McLaren can recover down the stretch. Because I hate to say it, Joe, if McLaren somehow figures out the way to choke this championship away, I think some heads are going to have to turn at McLaren. Somebody's going to have to go, because this will be one of the. I know we talked about it on previous shows. This will be one of the worst collapses, of a championship in the history of motorsports.
Yeah, in the history of motorsports, I can't think of a bigger collapse. And a lot of times it seems to be of their own wrongdoing. McLaren they need to figure out something to just, okay, let's get back to our winning ways. What do we look like at the end of last year when we started getting some good performances, beginning this year? But like you said, it seems like that Red Bull team is on another level. The fact that you got right there, 7th place, Yuki Tsunoda getting more points. In the beginning of the year, it looked like Yuki Tsunoda was just out there, not doing a thing. People wondering how soon will he get sacked? Who's going to replace him? Get a top 10 at this race. What an effort by him. It seems like he's getting better and better. Overall, with the 5 races remaining, far from over. The big thing, this Grand Prix, this allowed McLaren to salvage some points, because we saw what happened in the sprint race. Contact between Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, lap 1, turn 1. Granted, a lot of folks say it was a racing incident. There was some contact, I believe, from Fernando Alonso to George Russell. That got into Oscar Piastri, into Lando Norris. Racing deal. Wasn't a case of teammates taking each other out, which would be, of course, McLaren's big worst nightmare. But overall, then today, it just seems like Piastri, nothing. He is not what people were comparing to earlier in the year as the ice-cold Oscar Piastri. Lando Norris cannot get around Charles Leclerc for the longest time. Finally did towards the end. But it doesn't seem like he's at that top level like he is sometimes when he could go out there and get that win. Has the McLaren team lost confidence in itself?
To be honest, Joe, it really looks like they have, because, like I said, for much of the season, they have been the ultimate team to beat. That's exactly why they already clinched the Constructors Championship, because they have been the superior team. But for some reason down the stretch, I don't know what's going on at McLaren, but, with them struggling to manage, Oscar and Lando, leading to some hurt feelings within the team, it seemed like, things have begun to unravel. And then the same speed we saw early in the year from this McLaren, it has seemingly gone away, or the Red Bull has just gotten a lot faster, and they've maximized what they could, from the car to get Max a shot at the championship this late in the season. And, given the gap that we have right now in the championship points wise, all it takes is, one bad race for both Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, kind of like what happened in the sprint race. Imagine if the sprint race was a Grand Prix, both of those crash out. Max Verstappen ends up getting the max points. Now, then all of a sudden you have Lando Norris in third, and then Max Verstappen, he will be right on Oscar Piastri's heels, and then he could just outpoint Oscar Piastri the rest of the way and end up winning this championship. This is a very precious time in the season with McLaren. They simply just have to hold on at this point, because Red Bull is coming at full steam ahead. And it's crazy, because this McLaren team looked extremely confident earlier in the year, and now it seems like that confidence, that is completely gone, and they're a shell of their former early 2025 season self. So we know just have a few races left, but they're gonna have to get their acts together, or this is going to be a huge egg on your face moment for Zach Brown, Andrea Stella, and that entire leadership at the McLaren Formula One team.
Yeah, it seems like they have to get back to what made them great this season. Go back to, we gotta go out there, race. I know I've said, a lot of people have said, go back to just race, manage the team, try to just get those podiums, because at the end of the day, if you could do that, you might have a shot. But at the way Max Verstappen's looking, all these wins, he is truly on another level. And I know our colleague Ben has been saying this looks like Max of 2023. Today's race felt like Max of 2023. So I think everyone might be in trouble. And of course, they'll be racing next weekend in Mexico City. They'll have a few races left. Kobe, we know MotoGP, they have even fewer races left.
Yeah. And one of the biggest headlines over the weekend for MotoGP was a first-time winner, because for the first time, I know you hear about them winning in NASCAR, but Trackhouse Racing, they got the taste of champagne as MotoGP Grand Prix race winners. It was Raul Fernandez earning the first win for Trackhouse Aprilia, and he did the shoey for the Australian fans, a traditional Aussie celebration. Aprilia to first and third. Marco Bezzecchi won the sprint and really had to recover in the Grand Prix after serving those 2 long lap penalties. That was due to, he was received those because of the incident that injured Marquez, in Indonesia. And a lot of people thought that Bezzecchi, would have been able to recover from the 2 long lap penalties and win, but, just wasn't meant to be, despite, the great pace that he showed all throughout the weekend. Fabio Di Giannantonio was the only Ducati on the podium. The other Ducati in the top 10 was Alex Marquez in fourth. Pedro Acosta led the KTM riders with 4 in the top 10. Luca Marini and Alex Rins, each from Honda and Yamaha. Joe, will Aprilia be able to keep the winning streak alive in Malaysia?
Oof, that's a hard question. I'm not 100% sure they were able to do that. The big thing, I think, at the long straightaways, that front stretch, then the very back stretch where they got that hairpin corner, I feel that's going to be Ducati's strength. For Ducati, though, it's going to be, well, which rider? I mean, we look at it, Alex Marquez comes to mind, his teammate, Pecco Bagnaia. Which Pecco Bagnaia do we see? Are we going to see the one that came out, got a win a few race weekends ago, or the one that we've been seeing since that race win and just crashing out, no confidence, just struggling with that bike? Aprilia is looking better in the sense that I feel Marco Bezzecchi, he is really showing that what he could do with this bike, going out there getting the win. Trackhouse, now getting the hang of everything. What an effort by them. Very well-deserved win. Came down to tire management. That's why I think when it comes to Malaysia, much different circuit. I think still it's going to be a Ducati out there towards the front. It's going to be Ducati that's going to go out there, in my opinion, be the ones most likely getting the win at Malaysia.
Yeah, Ducati, they're still the fastest out there. So despite, Aprilia having a really good race weekend, the Ducatis are probably still going to be favored. And let's talk about a former Ducati rider who's now with Aprilia. We all know the story of Jorge Martin, basically getting butt hurt because they chose to promote Marquez to the Ducati factory team and not him. So he got really angry and went to Aprilia. But at the start of the year, the Aprilia bike, it wasn't able to keep up with the Ducatis at all. So Jorge gets extremely upset with Aprilia, tries, to burn all the bridges there to try to get out of his contract. And then turns out he was not able to get out of his contract. So he had to go back to Aprilia with the cookies and milks and beg them to, forgive him for all the trouble that he's caused. And then he gets back on the Aprilia, looks well, and then gets hurt again, which has been the story of Jorge Martin's 2025 season. So that's a short recap of what's been going on with Jorge Martin this year. And given how well the bike has performed as the years went on, where does this leave the injured Jorge Martin in the eyes of Aprilia and his disastrous 2025 title defense season?
It has definitely hurt everyone's confidence in Jorge Martin. The fact that Jorge Martin got hurt at the beginning of the year, we know from Jorge's past, he seems to sometimes have this issue where he'll race so hard, go out there, get hurt, miss races. It has happened more than once. I think people were more, okay, well, this was a testing incident. It's just the way it goes. Hopefully he'll come back. Then, okay, he's missing more and more of the races. Then this weird, I'm going to try to leave Aprilia. That came out of left field. That came after Aprilia got to a win at Silverstone with Marco Bezzecchi. And it's like, what are you doing? And I think really, if he is back, is because he has the pace. He has the skills to go out there and get the win. He didn't just luck his way into a championship in 2024. He went toe-to-toe with Pecco Bagnaia. If Aprilia has a decent bike, I think he could go out there and contend for those wins. We see what Marco Bezzecchi is doing. If anything, Marco Bezzecchi is proven, hey, Jorge Martin, he is not your number one rider. That's me. I'm getting you the wins. I'm getting you everything. I should be treated as the number one driver. So this is going to hurt Jorge Martin. And in my opinion, Jorge Martin is going to be under a tremendous amount of pressure. If Marco Bezzecchi is outperforming Jorge Martin in 2026, getting wins, getting podiums, and Jorge Martin is either middle of the pack or struggling. I think I'm pretty going to be talking about, okay, we hired you because you were going to be the defending MotoGP champion. That was a lousy year, and now you're not living up to your potential. We might be looking at somebody else for 2027. So I think Jorge, he's under a lot of pressure for next year.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's gonna be under a significant amount of pressure, and this year he just hadn't been able to buy a break. Getting injured. Trying to come back way too soon. I don't think that's a Jorge Martin issue. I think that's a larger issue with the culture. Of motorcycle racing and MotoGP. In general, I forgot which rider it was, Joe, but he was showing off the scars on his arms from that surgery on both arms, and he said, you're not a real MotoGP rider unless you've had these two surgeries on both of your arms, which is, I guess, is common for riders. I forgot what type of surgery it was and which rider it was. Maybe you remember, but
yeah, it's definitely the arm pump surgery because a bunch of riders like Vinales comes to mind. It may have been him, Marquez, Jorge. I mean, even Fabio Quartararo, but yeah, I think it was Vinales that did that, and that was when he was still with Yamaha and winning. Now he's not winning.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Me being someone who has just started watching MotoGP in the last 4 or 5 years or so to see how quickly this sport changes. I remember when Mir won the title, I believe 2020. Since that championship year, Joe, I don't think we've mentioned him hardly on any of our program. Like he just a 1 year wonder, and that was it. And then Fabio Quartararo, I remember covering his championship winning season. As the Yamaha has gone down, he's gone down as well, because we rarely mention Fabio Quartararo on this show anymore either. And Jorge Martin, he was the man last year. We talked about him a lot. And this year, the only time we've talked about him are in negative instances, when he's either bad-mouthing Aprilia trying to get out of his contract, or he's gotten injured again. And now you're going to have to go into 2026 under a lot of pressure, going to have to, continue to rebuild the relationship with Aprilia that he had started and tried to end in the middle of the year. And then, he's going to have to deal with his teammate who, riding really well on that bike right now. So we're going to be keeping a close eye on Jorge Martin in 2026 to see if he can get back to the championship winning form we saw from last year. And in the last two races, we've seen two new winners with Fermin Aldegar and Raul Fernandez. Pedro Acosta has been the fastest KTM rider lately and is still looking for his first win. Last year in his rookie season, he had 5 podiums, and this year he only has 3 podiums with the factory team. But KTM is winless, but Acosta leads the KTM riders to finish on the podium this year. Joe, do you think Pedro Acosta can win in Malaysia, and would it be a missed opportunity if he ends the season winless?
It would be a big missed opportunity if the season was to end and he was winless. I feel when it comes to KTM, he is the best rider out there. I mean, we saw what he did the last couple of weekends. He leads the KTM riders in podiums. And I think it has to be a little bit frustrating when you see riders like from Gresini, from Trackhouse, go out there, get the win. That's Aprilia. That's Ducati. They're getting the wins. KTM, a lot of people have to remember, he was with the Gas team, the satellite team for KTM last year. Comes over to the factory team, and it just hasn't been working out. I mean, even for Brad Binder, who has gotten wins year after year with KTM, nothing going on. So I feel for Pedro Acosta, Malaysia could be a good opportunity. Again, the straightaways is going to be how they could set up that bike. The tire management, because along those straightaways, you got some long sweeping corners. Maybe that could be something good for KTM and the tire management to go out there. But they might be then stuck in battles with Aprilia. I think at the end of the day, for Pedro Acosta, if he just keeps doing what he's been doing and just focusing on his race, that elusive win will find its way to him. He knows how to get the podium finish. He's finished second place, I believe, twice this year. So there's no reason why he can't get that top step. But I don't think he should be putting too much pressure on himself, because that'll just open himself up for potential mistakes, crashes, lose valuable points. And I think where he is right now, to say, hey, my first year, I was the lead KTM rider, that's a big accomplishment for only your second season in MotoGP.
Yeah, for sure. And a lot of times, in professional sports, some athletes, when it comes to pressure, they handle it well. And sometimes when there's too much pressure on another athlete, they don't handle it well. But I think there has to be a certain amount of pressure on Pedro Acosta to a certain extent, because look, the guy who's been winning almost every race throughout the year, Marc Marquez, he had surgery and he's out for the next few races or so. So there's a chance we may not see Marc Marquez on a bike again in the year 2025. So with a few races remaining in the MotoGP season, this might be Pedro Acosta's best chance to try to go out there and still win. Because, when you take away Marc Marquez, the field is wide open and anybody can go out there and win, if you qualified up towards the front, obviously on a good bike. So I think that Pedro Acosta has a great opportunity here to get a win, before the year's out with Marc Marquez out. And we'll certainly keep an eye on Pedro to see if he can finally break into MotoGP victory lane for the very first time. And now let's talk a little bit about the World Rally Championship. As Kali Rovanpera, we talked about on last Wednesday's episode of Great Tonight, he's going to be on his way out of the World Rally Championship, and he's going to be switching to single seaters and pursue open wheel racing, because he's going to Super Formula next year in Japan. And then he has the goal of performing well in Super Formula next year. And then in 2027, wants to move to FIA Formula 2. And then if he does well there, maybe he goes to Formula One with, Haas F1 and the Toyota Gazoo racing program they have there. So Toyota wants to try to get Kali Rovanpera on the path to go into Formula One and achieve his dream. And with all this news coming out within the last week, Rovanpera rode all the momentum to earn a World Rally Championship victory at the Central European Rally with 2 races remaining in the 2025 season. He is third behind Sebastian Ogier and Elfyn Evans in the standings, with all 3 drivers left in the championship battle. Rally Japan and a new Rally Saudi Arabia are up next to close out the year. Toyota claimed the manufacturers championship with three drivers, remain in the driver's title hunt. Joe, how does this change the dynamics within the team? You have 3 of your drivers going for the championship. Toyota really cared about that manufacturer's title they got, but now it's just down to those 3.
Yeah, down to those 3, and you got Sebastian Ogier, multiple time WRC champion, Kali Rovanpera, a past champion, and Elfyn Evans, who's leading it all with no championship. Toyota's gonna, in my opinion, be very hands-off. Like, we're giving you all the best data we can. You, the drivers, gotta also tell us what do you like to see when it comes to the gearing, when it comes to the tire selection. It's gonna come down to their co-pilots, co-drivers, with the notes as they go out on the course, because we saw how it's going to just make a simple mistake could change the championship. Thierry Neuville, stage 15, got canceled head on with a barrier that thankfully had some sort of protective pad, but still damaged the guardrail there. They were able to climb out of the car, but a little mistake like that by Angel's Toyota's drivers will be the difference, I think, in this championship, because I don't think Toyota's going to be playing favorites. Elfyn Evans, they'll love to say, hey, Elfyn Evans earned his first championship in World Rally Championship. If we see Kali Rovanpera becomes a 2-time champion, heck, that's even better, and you're going to go out towards open wheel racing. Then Sebastian Loeb to make a historic championship run, considering he was, I'm running part-time, change his mind. They got to be feeling really good. So really, I think the team, they're going to be handling it, and the aspect of may the best driver wins, which we all like. At the end of the day, it's going to come down to the experience of each driver, their co-driver, the setups they have. This is going to be phenomenal, and I think a lot of people are anticipating Elfyn Evans might have more pressure because he's trying to get his first one. That certainly may be the case. If he gets it, though, to say you held off Kali Rovanpera, Sebastian Ogier in equal equipment, that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's going to be fun, these final 2 rallies of the season, to see which Toyota Gazoo race and WRT driver is going to end up being the champion at the end of the year. And one quick follow-up before we go to the grid ranking, Joe. We know Sebastian Ogier last few years, he retired. He supposedly retired from full-time World Rally Championship competition because he wanted to spend time with his family, and race on his time rather than, having to commit to a championship. Since I was looking at one of the things with WRC on social media this week, they were talking about how when it comes to these events, it's basically like a whole week event where you're not just there, for like the weekend. You have to like be there like throughout the week and all of that. And that can definitely take a toll, on some of the rider, the drivers in this situation. So in 2026, do you think we could see the return of Sebastian Ogier to full-time competition, given how well he's performed this year, or do you think it'll be like this year? Like if he's in a good spot, at the midpoint of the season, he'll commit or decide not to.
I think we might get him to commit for one more full-time season, especially since it seems like his ambitions for sports car race and other forms has sort of subsided down. He might consider doing one more time. I mean, and that's the thing. Yeah, the World Rally Championship in the grid ranking has the shortest season, 14 to 15 races, where F1 has ballooned to 24. But still, they travel around the globe. I know they've been working on a potential U.S. date, so a trip to North America.
Yeah, Chattanooga,
Tennessee, yep. So the fact that they're truly global from you're in Central Europe this weekend, then you're going to Japan, then to Saudi Arabia, then to Monaco, and then from Monaco to Sweden, snow, cold. It's exhausting what these drivers are doing. So, but I got an idea. If he's allowed the opportunity to race full-time one more year, I think he would do it just to show he still can do it and get another record championship.
Yes, indeed. And now here's the top 10 of the grid ranking for week 29. Marc Marquez reclaimed second place as Sebastian Ogier did not finish in the top 3. Marquez's score didn't change as he's out of racing while he recovered from surgery, but Ogier's score dropped. He can reclaim second with a strong race in Japan. Back in week 18, Max Verstappen was 21st in the grid ranking, and now he's in the top 10. And looking at the rest of the ranking, next weekend, Formula One in Mexico City, MotoGP in Malaysia, NASCAR at Martinsville, and Supercars on the Gold Coast and Surface Paradise for the opening round of the Supercars finals, their version of the playoffs. We don't have any grid endurance performance index events for next weekend, but Matt White will have the full update from the weekend that just wrapped up this Wednesday on Grid Tonight. And now we're almost out of time for tonight. Time for our Grid One and Shining Moment from this racing weekend. So let us know down in the chat, watching here live or on replay, what's the one thing that stood out to you, whether it was from World Rally Championship, Central European Rally, Formula One's United States Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas, or the NASCAR Cup Series playoff race, the YellaWood 500 at Talladega Superspeedway. And Joe, I'll let you go first. What's your one shining moment?
I'm glad Matt, before he went off the air, mentioned several shining moments like Casey Mears at Talladega. That was a good one. A couple others, because I was just thinking, man, there's a lot of good moments from this race weekend. And I know in the chat room I could see Adam has got in. Talladega was crazy. Bubba could have won. And his shiny moment, Talladega, most lead changes during the next gen era. My shiny moment, I think, is going to come from MotoGP, Raul Hernandez, Trackhouse Racing. Both of them earning their first career MotoGP win. For Raul Hernandez, it just seems like he always had been one of those riders where, okay, he came in, some good people thinking about, oh, he has a potential here. An injury, not a whole lot of stuff going the right way. Last year got to podium at Phillips Island. Now he's here at Trackhouse Racing with the Aprilia. The Aprilia bike at the beginning of the year, it didn't seem that great, but they've been working on it to make it better and better and better. Trackhouse, their second season in MotoGP, just getting better and better and better. And it all came together in a race where it was a lot about tire management. We've seen how this race, if your tires, if you can't manage it well, like last year, you're going to go from leading it by a comfortable margin to losing the race lead. He put on a clinic. He was able to keep a lead, grow that lead, and take care of those tires. When you have competition like Alex Marquez, Marco Beschecchi behind you trying to catch up to you, Pedro Acosta, what an effort by him. And that Trackhouse team, celebrations. I know Trackhouse, they're in Nashville area. They would have loved to get that sweep. They didn't, but something to celebrate. Your first MotoGP win. That's my shiny moment.
Yeah, that's a great shining moment, Joe. And I'm sure a lot of people out there have heard of the song "Return of the Mac." At the end of this Formula One season, if things turn out well for Red Bull, there might be a new song written called "Return of the Max," because my shining moment is Max Verstappen. And I know that may shock a lot of people because we've been real critical of him at times on this show for his racecraft sometimes and when he's racing around others, but but the remarkable turnaround that Red Bull has had, since the summer to now has just been, absolutely incredible, or as Max would say, simply lovely. It's just been, a great run that this team has turned things around, because 9 times out of 10, we were saying on our shows, when McLaren's were so far ahead that this is game over for anyone else. This is going to be a two-way battle between Piastri and Norris, but Max Verstappen has really, rose above the rest of that Red Bull team, have done an amazing job making this car better, getting it to a point where it can go out there and compete for race wins on a week-to-week basis again, as the McLarens continue to falter. And his performance this weekend, the United States Grand Prix, awesome stuff from that group. Have to give them credit for what they've been able to do. And he's going to make the end of this Formula One season extremely interesting. It's not going to be like 2023, when he completely ran away with things. I'm not sure if it's going to be, as dramatic as 2021, tied winner take all in the finale. But it looks like it may come down to the very end. Max just has to not retire from races. He's going to need to try to go out there, try to win out, and have the McLarens run into trouble, which I hate to say they're more likely to do, given what we've seen in the last few races from them. So you got to give a call to Red Bull and Max Verstappen for being able to pull it together and be on offense, because at this point of the season, I think when you have the momentum, you want to be on offense. You don't want to be like McLaren on defense, because right now it seems like I said earlier, that Red Bull tractor gonna plow through some papaya oranges.
Yeah, I think that Red Bull be plowing through some papaya oranges, looking good, and return of the Max. Oh man, F1 far from over. Plenty of racing to go, and of course, we'll be covering it all right here. Subscribe, hit that bell icon so you don't miss any of our program. Tomorrow, Grid Encore, Ben and Brandon will be on the air to recap everything from Talladega this past weekend. Plus, Grid tonight, as we mentioned, Matt White from the Grid Endurance Performance Index will be on the air. Some of the big news to cover as well since the last week's episode. That's going to be a fun show to watch. Don't miss that. And of course, we'll be previewing Martinsville next race weekend. Big thank you to Colin the show, Mark, Robert, David, Matthew, and Crystal for investing in us throughout the 2025 year. Join them on Patreon. Link in the video description. You can also scan the QR code at the corner of the screen. That'll take you to allow you to invest in the Grid Network. And a big thank you to everyone tuning in, join the races, and just what a race weekend. Can't wait for next race weekend. That's only 6 days away when it all gets started with some sprint races for MotoGP. For Kobe and Matt, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time.